Let's get started. So I was telling people that because of this time, some of the people who were right before this, they thought about putting their house on the market and now they pump the brake because they're not sure. And some people thought about buying a house and they're also not sure now if I should spend the money or not. And this morning when I watched the news, they talk about this, that $1,200 that government give, whatever. How should you spend those money? There's a lot of uncertainty. You know, if you lost your job, when do you get back to work and all of that? If I should put my house on the market or not. For the people who has been having question about this whole real estate thing, I thought I would start doing this so that we could get some question answer from different perspective experts like yourself.
Awesome.
Joshua have been in real estate as long as I know him, and we know each other for a long time. And I know you were investor before, right? In real estate. You are one of those innovative marketer in real estate that really get yourself out there and have been doing great thing in real estate. And I love it. That's how I end up working with you and partnering up with you.
Yep.
So here's the thing. During this time, everybody have their opinion of what should they do with their real estate need right now. And I want you to give me 100% of your real opinion. And I know that some of your opinion may not fly with somebody,
sure,
but I want everybody really have a real perspective from experts so that they could make a sound decision. How's that?
Awesome. Excited to do it. I'm going to give you the honest opinion, whether you like it or not, and other people don't like it or not.
For those who's listening and watching and or you sharing with somebody, you know, you understand this. We're providing the information, the decision's still yours. And if you have more questions, you could reach out to, you know, myself or Josh. And we could go further with you on detail on your specific situation, I guess, right?
Yep, absolutely. Everybody's in a different, I guess we're all, I've heard a lot of people say we're all in the same boat. Well, that I saw a good post the other day that says we're not all in the same boat. We're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. And so if you're thinking about buying or selling, I highly recommend talking to a real estate agent like yourself, Candace, that's going to be able to help them assess the situation and see if it makes sense. Because right now, all we can do is speak in generalities because we don't know people's exact situation. So I'm going to be speaking in more generalities of my opinions, but it's going to be different on a case by case scenario. So it's super important to consult with a real estate professional like yourself.
All right. So let's get right into it. So I have a few questions and I'm going to asking question in terms of if you're a buyer or you're a seller and if you're a realtor, what should you do? Okay.
Awesome.
So let's go into with the seller because a lot of people right now, they're thinking, should I sell or not? I thought about moving. I thought about putting my house on the market, but should I sell? So the first question is this the right time to list your house for sale?
I actually do think it's the right time. If you look at 4 years ago in 2016, the second half of the year was very soft, and that's because it was an election year. Starting as early as June, it was very, very soft. Our last election cycle, I think the same exact thing is going to happen again. This is independent of the COVID-19 situation. Now, let's take into the consideration the COVID-19. Unemployment continues to rise. It is not going down. So if you're selling your house, that means your buyer pool becomes less and less and less as time goes on. Second half of the year, bad. Another thing that's going to be bad is less people are able to buy a home right now. Also, let's take into consideration real estate cycles. So real estate cycles, typically there's a crash every 18 years, but in between every crash, there's also cycles of about every 8 years to 7, 8, 9, 10 years of where you have a peak and then you have a bottom. At this point, we are riding the wave down near the top. So values are starting to drop. Even, at least in Illinois, they were starting to drop in many zip codes. Not all, but many zip codes were already starting to drop. Like, for example, the North Shore, that market is extremely soft right now and was well before the coronavirus a year ago. So we're already seeing a decline. If you're going to sell and you want to sell in the next couple years, 2 years from now, you are not going to get as much as what you are going to get today because we are in a downward trajectory. So if you're in a position where you can wait 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, then you're okay because I think values will be back where they are today. But if you're in a situation where you need to sell in the next couple years, you need to list as quickly as possible because, again, the closer we get to the election, the market's going to slow down and unemployment's going to kick in and the economy, unfortunately with everything going on, is declining. So if you're thinking of selling, you need to sell now. But I will say it with the caveat, if you're going to sell your house, move out of the house, move into into a hotel, move in with a family member. I just had a friend's house. I just actually relisted because the other buyers ended up backing out. But when we relisted, I told them, hey, you're going to have to move out of the house. And him and his wife moved in with their mother-in-law. That's what they had to do. They had to do it to sell it. And we had 2 offers on the house within 3 days. So with a possible third offer. The market is still strong, but it should be vacant, because if a house is occupied right now, you have to jump through so many hoops to see a house. You want to make it as easy as possible for a buyer to be able to see that house, and you will actually have an upper leg advantage over houses that are occupied. So if you're a vacant house, you're actually going to be in a better position to sell than even you were, believe it or not, 4 months ago. And another example comes to mind of a deal me and you are working on. You're representing the buyer, I'm representing the seller. And this was a house that was sitting on the market for a very long time. And actually, your buyer came in after the COVID-19 thing happened. Yes. And it's because, in my opinion, it's because it was vacant and it was easy to show. So if you're a vacant house, or if you live there, move out temporarily and price it right. This is not a time to overprice a house. A realtor does a comparative market analysis. This is kind of like a valuation for your house. As an example, if they think the value of the house is $300,000, now is not the time to list it for $325,000 or $350,000. That example I shared with you, we listed, my valuation was $300,000. We listed at $300,000. We got multiple offers, and we got what we were asking for right on the money, because we were priced to sell, price competitive. We didn't underprice it, but we priced it at its true value. If you're going to sell, be smart, because if you overprice it, you're going to get into that second half of the year. And then, again, we're on that downward trajectory. You're not going to be able to sell this house for a very, very long time. So now is not a time to overprice a home. That's for sure.
Well, that actually got to my second question. You actually kind of answered it. Would you need to reduce your price if you're selling right now in real estate? Just like you say, if your CMA was 300, and a lot of time people kind of bump it up a little bit just for the negotiation room. But I guess now you just go with the real CMA analysis, right?
I always recommend that, always, and especially today, because as an example, I run a tool which sees how many buyers are at different price points. There's more buyers at 300,000 because people search on even increments. So there's buyers looking between 250 and 300, and then there's buyers looking at 300 to 350. So if you go to 325, you're missing all those 250 to 300 buyers. So you have a much, much bigger pool of buyers by pricing it right, where you then get into a multiple offer situation and actually net more. I wrote a book called 15 Reasons Your House Hasn't Sold. In that book, I talk about strategic pricing. Everybody thinks conventional wisdom is, let me price it over so I can negotiate. What ends up happening is the house sits there, and this is true now more than ever. You need to price it right off the bat, because in my opinion, you will never get as much for your house as you will when you're initially list, because it's a new listing, it's a hot listing. The longer you stay, ultimately, the less you're going to get. And even Association of Realtors has done studies on how overpricing a home actually ends up in sellers selling the house for less. It always bites people in the butt when you overprice a home. So price it right.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, if I'm a seller, after I'm listening to all of what you said now, I decided, you know what, in my situation, it's good for me to actually list my house. But as a seller, besides moving yourself out of the house, which I think is a big deal now, going to show a vacant house is much better than showing a house with people living in there.
There's so many procedures we have to follow now because of COVID-19.
Yes. So if I'm a seller, besides that, what are the things I need to do or need to know before I make that decision to sell?
Yeah, well, that's going to be and this is where it gets specific to each situation, but talking to your realtor and seeing what are your goals and needs, when do you need to sell? Because again, if you're in a position where you're not in a hurry, you're fine waiting 5 years, and I would say, but if you're in a position where you need to sell in the next 2 years, I would list immediately. It's only going to get worse. I mean, the thing I've been talking about has been very controversial on social media. Is everybody has been very focused on COVID-19, which it's a serious disease. People are getting sick. It's horrible. It's not a good situation. But at the same time, the economic consequences, I've been talking about this for a very, very long time. They're talking about potentially 500 million people across the world being thrust into poverty. This is something we've never seen before economically. Again, if you're in a situation that you need to sell in the next 2 years, sell now, because it's not going to get better anytime soon. It's just the way it is. If you're in a position where you're willing, you've got 7-8 years, then wait. But if you need to sell in the next 2 years, I would list your house immediately.
Yes, I remember I bought my house in 2006 and then the 2008 comes along. I think the last time you came over to look at my house, it was still not get back to the original.
A lot of houses haven't. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So it took that long, and it's 2006. This is what, 2020?
29, yeah, 2020. So it's still, your value still isn't there.
I could see that if you need to sell it now, because
Correct.
it's not going to go up anymore than what you have already.
But
So,
move out of the house. That's the only way you're going to have an advantage right now. And actually, again, I think you will be in a better place than you were, believe it or not, before COVID if your house is vacant. So because you have a leg up on every other listing out there.
well, so let me play a little devil advocate here. Mm-hmm. Let's say if I'm a seller, I don't have that ability to move out the house. Mm-hmm. What should I do? There are people in that boat. Like they can't move out the house. They can't move to the in-law. They can't afford the hotel. What can I do to ease this process a little bit more?
This needs to be a conversation between you and your agent, but making it as easy to show the property as possible. So when you get a showing request, I don't care if the showing request is 30 minutes from now. Mm-hmm. You need to be in a position where you have a to-go bag ready. You can grab the kids, grab everybody from the house, jump in the van, turn on all the lights in the house, open all the doors so that way the buyers don't touch anything in your house. They don't have to touch anything. You tell the buyer's agent, we left all the lights on for you. We left all the doors open for you. Please don't touch a bunch of things, but have your stuff ready to go. And then when you get back, especially with what's going on, clean your door handle when you get home and clean things that you might be touching. But you got to be ready like in an instant to be able to show that house, because every showing right now is gold, more valuable than gold. You cannot deny a showing request right now if you want to sell your house.
Let's talk about buy. I'm a buyer. Is this a good time for me to buy? Maybe I could actually get some good deal because of the circumstance. It's a good idea. But then also because of the COVID-19, there's a lot of people afraid of going to see houses. So is it a good time?
Yeah, so great question. Do the opposite of what I said if you're a seller. And you should actually be looking for houses where people live in them, because it's so hard to see a house that somebody lives in. There's forms the agents have to fill out. There's procedures that they need to follow. So if I were a buyer, I'd be going after homes that are currently occupied so that you can get the best deal possible. And you're able to use the whole situation of what's going on as a negotiation strategy. You also have to look at what are you paying in rent. So I'll give a simple example. Let's say you're renting something right now and it's equivalent of what you're looking to buy, and you're paying, let's just say $2,000 a month. Mm-hmm. Well, if you could buy something for, let's say, $1,500 a month with property taxes, insurance, and your mortgage, that's a good investment. Not only that, you get to write off your property taxes up to $10,000, and you're able to write off your mortgage interest. It's a very, very wise situation in that case, because you're buying it. You're able to negotiate a better deal for occupied houses because they're struggling even getting showings right now because of all the hoops you have to jump through. And you can send your agent to do like a FaceTime or a Google Duo and do a preview of the house for you. Let's say there's 5 houses you look at. The agent goes to view 5 of those occupied houses, and 2 of those are really, really desirable. Well, then you, at that point, you go and see the house. So you can work with your agent that's representing you. This is a time you need to be represented by an agent that has your best interest at heart. So I would not be reaching out directly to listing agents thinking you're going to get a better deal, because that listing agent represents the seller. They have the seller's best interest. You need somebody that's batting for you, is advocating for you. And so you need to be exclusively represented by an agent who can do that legwork for you, seeing these houses, vetting them for you, doing the FaceTime or the Google Duo to show you these houses, and then the good ones, and you go there and try to negotiate a better deal.
That makes sense. At any time, I know I was a home buyer for a couple of times. And anytime buying a house for me, invest 200, 300 grand into something. It's always best to have somebody on your side.
Absolutely.
And, just with the buying process, just with the paperwork itself is scary for me.
Yeah.
So, I say in general, you should have someone to represent you and help you being on your side. But this is more than ever because you don't want to be the one that go out there and try to risk yourself to see all different houses on your own.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't cost you anything as a buyer to work with the buyer's agent. So there's zero cost to you. The sellers, at least here in Illinois, they pay the buyer's commission and the listing agent's commission. So essentially it's free for you as a buyer. But why wouldn't you tap into the expertise of a realtor with all the connections? Also, interest rates are so low right now. Again, in that aspect, it's also a great time to buy because I think you can negotiate a really good deal and you can get a great interest rate that we're probably never going to see an interest rate this low again in many, many years.
I talked to a lot of different lenders and everybody say, now is the best time to buy or refinance because of the interest rate.
So low. As
a buyer, what should I know before I go and buy during this time? Besides, we already know you should get a realtor. I highly recommend, if it's not me, if it's not Josh, you always find someone to represent you. But besides that, what should you know before you go and buy?
So this is going to be more generals because I'm recommending actually viewing houses that are occupied. I would ask the seller, number one, to open all the interior doors. So that way you don't have to touch any door handles. I would also ask the seller to turn on all the lights and then tell them you're not going to touch lights because that's something that you're going to touch, they're going to touch, and just be best that you don't touch anything. And, you bring some Lysol wipes with you. You can wipe the lockbox down. You can wear gloves, protect yourself. I mean, to me, that's the most important thing. And really rely on that expertise of the agent. And that agent is going to be able to give you very specific advice as to what you should,
the step that you need to do.
The steps, and of course, getting pre-approved. But I would recommend asking the realtor for a recommendation for getting financed versus a lot of people bank. I'm not going to throw any one bank under the bus, but there's a lot of banks out there that I bank at, but I would never get a loan through them. The reason why is because mortgage lenders are salary employees. So if those mortgage lenders give out one loan or 100 loans, they get paid the same amount of money.
So they won't work hard for you.
They're not going to work hard. You want to work with somebody who I call it's kill to eat. A mortgage loan officer, if they don't get you the loan, they're not getting paid. Now your interests are aligned to make sure that they get you the best deal and get you the best rate. And then they're also able to have banks compete against each other to get you the best rate as well. Ask your realtor for a recommendation if you're not already working with a mortgage. And again, the word is broker because they broker multiple banks, multiple lenders, multiple investors to get you the best deal.
So that you could actually pick and choose the best term for yourself.
Absolutely.
They will work for you. Great suggestion. So as a buyer, obviously, with all of this and what you suggest that, go for the house that's occupying.
That are hard to see. Anything that's hard to do right now is where you're going to get the best opportunity and the best deals.
So that's the strategy. So most likely, if you have to buy, right, you could potentially get a good deal, right?
Oh yeah, right now especially.
But and every single case is different. I mean, you have to talk to your realtor if it's a good time to buy or not. What are some of the things that you should talk to your realtor about to assess if this is the right time for you to buy or not? I just don't like this house anymore. I want to buy a new house. Is that something that I should be considered right now?
I think right now is actually a bad time to downsize if you're okay with where you're at, unless you have a need that you need to downsize. But lower priced homes are still selling like hotcakes, and higher priced homes are harder to sell right now. You're going from a buyer's market selling if you're a higher priced home to then a seller's market. So you're losing a lot of your equity. And again, I'm speaking in generality, so talk to your agent. Versus if you are upsizing, you're moving into a bigger home, you can negotiate typically a better deal because when you're selling your small home, it's a seller's market. And when you go to buy your bigger home, it's a buyer's market, especially if somebody's living there. So again, this is very general terms. Look at that situation in that case. And then in the case of if you're renting, look at your numbers, work with your agent, introduces you to a mortgage broker so they can run numbers and scenarios for you and see if it financially, needs to make financial sense, and it needs to make sense with your lifestyle, where you work, what you do, where your family lives, and that sort of thing. And that's also something you need to discuss with not just your realtor and not just the mortgage broker, but you're married or your partner, or, whatever the case may be.
As a realtor, how should I still want to have that paycheck. How should I protect myself and my client during this time?
So as I mentioned, I think number one, like I said, this is going to be your best friend. I don't know if you could see it. Lysol.
Okay.
Wipe the lockbox down. Ask the seller to leave all doors, all lights on. Wipe down the lockbox. Wipe down the handle. You can put gloves on when you enter the door. Wear face masks. If you don't have a face mask, you can make them at home. There's plenty of YouTube videos on how to make a homemade mask. But take those precautions. It doesn't take that much time to do. Take those extra precautions. Every day as human beings, even before COVID-19, you leaving your house, there's risk. I don't care, what time in history. As soon as you walk outside your door, there's a risk. There's even a risk to staying inside your house. Fires, being electrocuted. There's so many things that can kill you. But being aware of the risk and taking those extra precautions. I've always been somewhat of a germaphobe. Like when I use public restrooms, I try to figure out a way to open a door without me ever touching the door, whether it's using a paper towel, if it has a kick thing. I mean, I've always been very conscious of it. And me being a germaphobe, I've kind of, the fact that this is out here, I'm making extra precautions, but these are things I've already been doing in general for a very, very long time. And people that haven't been necessarily germaphobes, now there's things you can incorporate to just be extra safe during this time. But, I hate to break it to you, but driving your car, you have a risk of dying in car. I mean, millions upon millions of people die every year from car accidents. Are we going to say we shouldn't drive cars? I mean, there's got to be a point where take the precautions. I'm not saying that this isn't real. Take precautions, be safe, be smart, but I don't think you should stop living your life. Again, we're not in an ideal situation, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to put food on your table for your kids, your family. Again, with anything, there's certain risks involved. Just be smart about the way you interact. Take those precautions, definitely do. But to say, hey, I'm not going to attempt to make a living anymore, in my opinion, that doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't care, where you stand, politically or whatever, but the government is not going to take care of you 100% and your family in the way that it should. It's impossible. So you have to take some initiative to do it yourself. The government, again, they don't know, like we're talking about, I'm speaking in generalities. Government is taking a holistic approach or an entire approach of complex situation and applying some scenario of, these people are going to get $1,200. Well, $1,200 for some people, they might do better in this situation because they weren't making that. But talk about people that lost their jobs and no longer have no income, and let's say their mortgage is $5,000. Well, $1,200 doesn't do anything for that situation. So you got to do what's best for you and your family, and be smart and be cautious in this time.
Thanks for doing this interview with me. I'm sure people will actually get a lot of value from this. And again, you may not agree with everything Josh sharing, but it's just information in general so that you could make some decision. Josh, if you could share the link to the book that you talk about, that would be great.
Awesome.
And I'm going to also share a link to an ebook that I put together on 90 things that you should know before you sell. That's all I have. Guys, thank you. Josh, thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Candace. Awesome.